Last night I was thinking about something that we've all heard years ago, to not judge a book by its cover. And I thought about books I had picked up over the years where the cover really caught my attention, and I looked at what was on the flyleaf and thought, this is going to be a great book that I'm really going to enjoy. And so I bought the book, and I thought about times where I had gone to a restaurant and there was a picture on the menu of a meal that just looked absolutely terrific, and I ordered the meal. And sometimes the book measured up and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes the meal measured up, sometimes it didn't. But more importantly than that, it brought to mind two experiences that I have had with individuals separated by many, many, many years. The first one was when I would come home from college. I had the opportunity to be working at an upscale department store in an upscale suburb of New York City. And I was working in the women's dress department, and I think this particular day there were two other women working with me, possibly three, but I think it was just two. And it was a hot, humid, yucky summer day. And I was very grateful that I was inside the store where it was air conditioned and not outside. But we had practically no customers that day. I don't believe I remember any day that was any more quiet than this particular day. And I don't think we'd had a body walk into the dress department in a couple of hours, and we're just all kind of standing around and looking at each other. Now, the custom was that you would rotate, and so if you had the last customer, whether they bought or not didn't matter, but if you had interacted with the last customer, you did not approach another customer until the other people working in the department had had their turn to approach a customer. And so on this very boring, quiet summer day, a woman walked into the department. And the women that I was working with immediately dropped back. And although I wasn't the one that was due to approach the next customer, they looked at me and they said, "You take her." And I looked at them and said, "Well, okay." Well, this customer was a tall woman, broad-shouldered, an African-American woman. And I don't think that's why they stepped back, because we regularly had, not a lot, but some African-American women or Cuban-American women or other minorities, if you will. And what set her apart was the way that she was dressed. This was back in the time where you dressed up to go shopping. We dressed up to work. I'm talking nice clothes, not fancy, but very nice, proper business attire, high heels, nylons. It was a different world back then. And that's the way our customers dressed. Now, this woman, back up for a minute. For those of you who are not of my vintage, you didn't clean house and work around the house in pants. You wore a house dress. A house dress was a comfortable dress made out of cotton that could easily be washed. And this woman was wearing a house dress. It was somewhat faded. It was absolutely immaculate. It was starched and ironed, and there wasn't a wrinkle on it. But it was a house dress. And the women I was working with had made a judgment, because we did not expect to see somebody come into the department who would be able to afford to buy the merchandise wearing a house dress. So let me talk to you a little bit for a minute about the merchandise. If you look at what minimum wage was at that time that had just been introduced, and you translate it into minimum wage today, the average dress in today's dollars in that department would have run someplace in the neighborhood of $250. Not inexpensive. And so there were expectations about our customers and our customer base. And this woman who moved with great grace, and there was a regalness about her carriage, but she didn't fit the stereotype of our typical customer. So I approached her, I engaged her in conversation. She took a half a dozen dresses that she had selected into the fitting room, and I didn't do a whole lot with her. I think maybe I got her a different size or a different color or brought in another dress or two. But I was checking on her, but I wasn't really heavily engaged, in interacting with her. I was respecting, how I felt she wanted me to interact with her. And she was really quite quick. Within about a half hour, she had decided what she wanted to purchase. She purchased 5 dresses. Now, this is, long before computers, it's all being manually written up. I'm writing up this order for these 5 dresses. And it comes time for her to pay, and she reaches in her pocket and she pulls out cash and just peels off bills to pay for her 5 dresses. And I thanked her very gracefully and, sent her on her way. Well, in the meantime, my coworkers were not happy with me because they thought I should have given them the sale. Because you see, how we were judged in terms of our effectiveness was what was called book, which was what our sales were. And because they were permanent and because raises tend to be based in part on book, I should have given it to them. And I simply said, hey, I did the work, you didn't want to, and, I want to be welcome to come back here at Christmas time. What I sell is every bit as important to me as what you sell is to you. But I realized that I was able to make that sale because they had made a judgment and had put me in the driver's seat, and I was smart enough, even at a very young age, not to make a judgment. Fast forward many, many years, and I had an opportunity to interact with another woman. And this was somebody where I just felt there was such a powerful connection, and we could do so much good together. And yet, as things progressed, I found that I couldn't trust her to keep her word. I couldn't trust her to do what she said she would do. And things didn't go the way I expected them to go. And so, in one instance, I learned the importance and the value of not judging a book or a person by their appearance and by first impressions, because in another instance, I had done that and I had been wrong. And that was a case where I had had a positive first impression rather than maybe one that was a little bit more reserved or neutral, if you will. And so we frequently hear that people make judgments about us within just a few seconds. The common number seems to be 7 seconds. They'll decide if they like us, if they trust us, if they want to know more. I actually saw something not too long ago where they said it happens in a fraction of a second. But here's the risk. If we are judging other people in a matter of seconds, like my coworkers did this one woman years ago, to their detriment and to being unfair and disrespectful for her, everybody loses. I made a judgment and I wound up being wrong. But here's what I would encourage us to think about. Yes, we want to put our best foot forward. We want people to judge us positively. But we have no control over the judgments that they will make about us. What we do have control over is the judgments that we make about other people. And I was wrong recently in the judgment that I made about this one woman. But I have absolutely no regret about having done that, because I was embracing an opportunity that I thought had so much potential. The reality is, she chose not to embrace that same opportunity. Her choice, her loss. When we close the door to people who could enrich our lives on the basis of a snap judgment, of judging that book by its cover, we lose what could be. And when we take the time to open that door and then let experience temper our judgments, we have everything to gain and nothing to lose. I'm not saying trust blindly and unconditionally, regardless of warning flags that we may see. Be pragmatic, be wise, but don't make snap judgments that could close the wrong doors. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks for listening.